Welcome back to Boost Imbalance Podcast,
where beauty meets brains.
All right. So this week we're going to dive into some of the statistics in the aesthetic industry, kind of where it's headed, what procedures are looking to show the biggest growth, and what that looks like on the business side, where we should be spending most of our time when it comes to advertising, jobs, all the good stuff. And then in the next few weeks, what we'll be diving into is kind of each one of these topics that is showing growth, such as like Botox, obviously, that's not going anywhere. So we'll dive into, what patients can expect, what providers can expect, some of the, myths that we'll debunk, all of that good stuff. So that'll be in later episodes. But today, we're talking about growth.
So speaking of growth, I try to think back to when we first started. There were 3 med spas.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I don't even know.
I think there's 9 or 10. That was less than 3 years ago.
Yeah, because when I started injecting, I knew like 1 or 2 injectors in the area and like nothing else. So it has grown tremendously since I've started and since I've moved here.
And that's just local. That's just local here in Jackson. When we started, there were only, I want to say 3 or 4, but regardless.
When we opened, we're saying, not when we physically started.
No, when we opened in 2022, I believe there were 3 or 4, and now 2 years later, I believe there's 9 or 10, and that is within a 20-mile radius.
That's crazy.
That's just here in Jackson. That is in a small town that is the last to learn about everything in aesthetics. So if that's happening here in just our local town, I cannot even imagine how much this is going to grow.
So the year 2021, this industry was estimated at $14.4 billion. In 2021. Now, keep in mind that we didn't get the FDA approval for Botox and a lot of our like injectables until like early 2000s. So that's how much growth we've had since then. So our projection for 2030 is showing $47 billion in this industry.
That's insanity.
Vanity has gone wild.
Vanity is at an all-time high, to say the least.
We're stressed.
Hey, well, that's true.
What brings you joy now is online shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Your Botox, your filler, just feeling good about yourself, not necessarily just, physically, but emotionally, mentally. I think we're all honing in more so on ourselves.
We are.
Which it sounds vain, but really, like, you can't be your best self when you're feeling like your worst. So
this is true. I think
it's a good thing, obviously.
It's not necessarily just Botox and dermal fillers. I think it's getting a lot more prominent too. For example, I've seen a change here in Jackson, in the amount of people that would come forward saying, yes, I get these services, versus 5 years ago. I don't know. I'm all natural, whatever it is.
Like this.
Exactly. Now people are like, yes, girl, I went down the street, got my lips done. Brittany Gable did my lips, whatever it was.
Supporting.
They're happy and excited to tell people about their new things instead of keeping it.
Yeah, like, let's help each other feel good. Let's share our resources and our connections. That's literally the goal. And I feel like women are getting better about that. Come on, we do this for each other, because men could literally care less. And now we're seeing actually more men do this too, so that's been exciting.
That is exciting. It's a whole new demographic when it comes to aesthetics, but it's a fun demographic.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we can do for men, and unfortunately they don't know. And here in Jackson too, that's another thing. A lot of people, they think med spa. No, a man, my husband's one of them. I'm a man's man. I'm not going to be da-da-da-da-da. But then I started talking to him a little bit about it and explaining how much better this can make him feel, make him look, and now he's in here once a week. Yeah. So men, it's more prominent. It's not as much as we want it to be.
I think the social media has given it a name, like especially in places where it's not talked about as much. I feel like there's a negative connotation on what aesthetics is, and there's so much medical behind this too that I think people forget. Like, we don't just do Botox to look pretty. We do Botox because we have patients that are suffering from trigeminal neuralgia, from chronic pain, from migraines, and there's ways that we treat that also by making sure they look good at the same time. So there's so much more we do in this industry, and that's what we're trying to teach people too. Like, there's more than one avenue here. This is medical, and we support both sides, and they kind of go hand in hand.
They do.
And I think that's why this is growing so much so, because...
Well, that's how all this started. Yeah. All of this was medical things to begin with.
Everything.
And then it was like, oh, a side effect does that? What? Yeah. And then they use it for that.
We'll talk about, like, literally how Botox started. It started as a food poisoning. Okay, that's where we learned about it.
Poison me.
But they seemed like it was literally helping in small amounts, like people with strabismus, which was cross-eyed, and migraine relief, stuff like that, like muscle spasticity. So there was just a lot of things that we were utilizing it for. And that's, yeah, everything pretty much on this side of medicine was used on the other side of medicine first. We've seen that it actually makes you look better too. So we started calling it cosmetics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with that being said, Botox and dermal fillers obviously being one that's going to grow tremendously. And it's because it's a non-invasive procedure and people, like, time is so short. I don't know what happened in COVID, but I feel like a pause button was hit and then a fast forward.
I agree.
And we don't have time for downtime. So people want to do things that has minimal downtime and they can get back to their normal life, and they want it now. They want fast results.
If they could have gotten it yesterday, that's when they want it.
Right.
We went through a period of everything was about convenience, and now people still expect that. They want to come in, have a treatment in 5 minutes, have no downtime, be ready to go to that event tomorrow.
But also, we're in a world where everything is at our fingertips. Like, we don't have to, we literally can grab our phone and just about get anything we want.
Within 24 hours most of the time. Yes. You have to think about that.
So we want our faces the same way. Or our health, or the way we feel. We want to feel better today. We don't want to wait, 6 months on.
And a lot of the times too, you're going to think a lot of people have been either worried about this concern they've had for X amount of years, or feeling this way for 8 years. Like even me with my hormonal issues, I went to doctor after doctor for 8 years until I finally found someone. So I get people wanting it tomorrow, but the beauty of it is you can literally get it as quick as you want it now. Everything is so quick now. It's so quick and accessible. Speaking of becoming an injector now versus, now I'm not saying it's any easier once you become an injector, but I think the accessibility of becoming one, think about it. There's online classes. There's a multitude of classes within a certain mile distance from us, Nashville, Memphis. It's becoming a lot more accessible. And then
to change your career overnight.
And not only that, you have marketing tools that are free for you.
Yeah.
Social media is 80% of your clients will more than likely come from social media. And it's free. It's free. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And it's not selfies of yourself and things like that. This is, if you post your work and let people trust you, even online, that it's free.
It's being relatable too. I feel like I kind of went through an imposter syndrome on social media too, because I'm like, okay, what do people want to see? And then I was like, you know what? Forget that. I'm going to show people who I am and what I do, and try to relate to them in the sense of like how I relate to an individual that's in my chair. So that's kind of been my transformation. And people are just looking for people to be more relatable now, because social media paints this beautiful picture of everything just being fine and dandy or perfect. And it makes it intimidating to come into a place and ask about something you're intimidated about.
Well, it's a problem. It's a quote unquote problem, and no one has problems anymore. No one talks about their problems anymore. And everybody's got problems.
Yeah.
Everybody's got things that they're concerned about, and you don't need to be intimidating. They're already intimidated without even talking to you, without even knowing who you are. They're intimidated.
And the support now, I feel like, is better. Like, online bullying is getting less. Now, I mean, there's a lot of it, but when it comes to like people supporting people doing things that make them feel better about themselves, like, you can't judge anybody, because putting makeup on every day, coloring your hair, wearing Spanx, you are doing nothing different than the people doing getting surgery done. You are altering your appearance to feel better about yourself. So why are you going to put pressure or bully somebody because they choose to get fillers or Botox, or they choose to have a mommy makeover, or they choose to get plastic surgery on their face or something? Like, if it helps that person wake up in the morning and feel better and have a better day and go about themselves more positively, then we should support that. That's how I feel about the industry. I don't look at it like, oh, you should be happy with what God gave you. Yes, I do believe that. But I also believe that we have these tools for a reason. Like, we wouldn't be able to create these things if we weren't supposed to.
I agree with you on that.
I'm not going to get into the Jesus side of things, because it's not my realm of things. It's just how I feel about the industry and how I feel about you feeling about yourself, like feeling confident and doing something. Because if getting up and looking at something brings you so much distress that fixing or altering that one little thing brings you joy, then do it.
and you have the means to do that, why would you
Yeah.
not do that? To me, I equate it to going to the gym. It's something you can do to fix a concern that you have.
Yeah.
It is accessible to you. You have the money to go to the gym. It's not only for your health, but for how you
And
look, how
insurance will
you
pay for it
feel.
now too.
It's,
So
it's just, it's
yeah.
crazy to me. I don't feel like there should be any stipulations, guidelines
No.
to what you should be able to get or not get. I mean, the joke in Jackson is you can only have surgery from the chest up in Jackson.
Yeah, yeah, that's the
You
only
know,
acceptable areas.
that's the only acceptable areas.
So I think it's just, yeah, do it for you, not for anybody else, obviously. And I think that's why this is growing. Obviously, social media is huge. That's why 80% of our clientele will come from that because that's what we're all on. What's growing in population is going to be, microneedling. We love things that our body can do for itself too. Like we are getting in our holistic age. Our foods are getting worse. Diseases are getting worse. So people are really trying to be better about what they're putting in their bodies and doing things to help prevent aging and use their body to heal itself. So exosomes and things like that, stem cells, we're seeing a real big growth in that. Microneedling, just things that we can do to stimulate our own natural collagen production. That is going to prevent our aging. That's a huge trend, and that we'll get into in later episodes too on what you can do and kind of questions that go along with that and what products we utilize, all that good stuff. But PDO thread lifts, which is a form of collagen stimulation as well to prevent having to get a facelift. So there's so many avenues.
I think everyone's really jumping on this. Let's go to the root of the problem. No more
Yeah.
Band-Aid situation, which I am all
Well,
about.
we're cutting out the pillow face, which is really nice. We have so many modalities that we can utilize in this industry, and we have to in order to correctly treat our clients. And that's where I feel like we shine, is that we do offer so many different procedures, and we look at what's actually going on with the client versus what they're asking for. They may not understand. And we do like full consultations, and we'll tell you X, Y, and Z here versus this way. So there's different ways we can go about getting you to where you need to be. But the goal is, one, to treat the underlying problem, just like any other disease process. You're not just going to put a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly.
Like
well, if you do, then expect to pay for that Band-Aid every time it comes off. You know what I mean? You have to. Aesthetics is a we're not at the point where we can reverse aging just yet. I mean, not entirely.
We can slow it down.
We can
can't
slow it down.
Stop it completely. We're still working on that.
So, and trying to get people to understand that this is a maintenance, just like everything else. It is constant maintenance with your aesthetic look, just like it is with your health and your weight, anything else, your hair,
hormones, especially that changes dramatically. I mean, for females, every 5 years we've got a new hurdle to jump.
But unfortunately, that is what keeps us in business. That's what we are there to help guide these people in the correct direction to get long-term goals out of these short-term fixes.
And then also to know that like your health, your hormones, all these things contribute to the cosmetic side of medicine. It is full circle. I mean, you can't fix one without fixing the other. If something is imbalanced, so it's a seesaw. If you got one side imbalanced, you're never going to get it where you need to be. You're stuck up here. You're not going to get down without fixing this. So that is, I think, a huge thing. Like we are starting BioT, which we're very excited about.
So excited.
And other ways to help, not just hormones, but vitamin deficiencies. I mean, there's so many things. Autoimmune problems. There's so much that goes into this that affects your skin. Your first line of defense is your skin.
That's right.
So that's exciting. So all this stuff is going to grow. With that being said, jobs for this in this industry are growing, and the demand is going to grow as well. I feel like, just like we said earlier, there was 3 when we started. Now they're on every corner. I think what you could do for yourself is, 1, stay educated. Continue your education, because this is going to change dramatically, and we are advancing in technology, in medications, in this industry, because it's so great. Every year we learn something new, and there's a new advancement, and then there's a better way we can do it. So you have to be ever changing and know like you're in a constant learning situation when you're in this industry.
You have to, if you are a closed-minded person, this is not going to be the job for you.
No.
Because like you said, and I would, it's daily that we learn something new. Like there's a new technique, there's a new product out, there's a new, have you heard about the salmon DNA? I mean, it's insanity. It's just something new every other day. But it's because this field's becoming more prominent. We're looking into it. People are not finding these products as a byproduct of a medication used for a medical reason anymore.
Yeah.
It's like now they're actually sought after.
And studied.
They're studied
and proven.
and yes, all of that. I mean, but the thing is, each client, you have to think about this. Each client can come in. If you were to put a number on a client's head, which you never want to do, but each person could bring in potentially $500 to $1,000 each person. That's on the low end, you know. Like, let's just say they come in and get their maintenance Botox for every 3 months. But that is why client retention is so important to me.
Yes.
That's what brings in the passive income for you. It's just, and every time you're building more and more of a relationship, getting them to trust you more, and then you're branching them out on their aesthetic journey, and they're enjoying the results at the same time.
Keeping them in the building. That's why having multiple modalities, also, you know, the foundations, your skincare, having somebody that's really good with that, because they can't just get their Botox and fillers and not take care of their skin. Like, it's pointless. So teaching a client from the basics to down to their in how they're eating, what they're eating, how much water they're drinking, all of that ties into the aesthetic side, but also the medical side. So this is not just a one stop. Your client, when they're in here, you need to be able to educate them and get them to understand the full picture. And they may not at first, but that's where that trusting relationship is built. You're not trying to get them in that chair and sell them whatever you can that day. You're trying to build a relationship. You want this person in your chair. You want to have a close, like your hairdresser. I mean, that's a close relationship. They know stuff about you probably nobody knows.
Nobody.
They'll know where you hide your bodies. Like that, they're your ride or die. So the same thing goes with your aesthetic injector, or, you know, the person that you're seeing for your hormones, your provider. Like this is very personal.
There's something that happens when that door shuts.
Yes.
It's just like,
well, all your insecurities come to the surface. You're very vulnerable, and nobody likes that. And that's when emotion is attached to vulnerability.
Absolutely. That's very,
and so you have to understand that and be somebody that can be compassionate and understand that, like, you are pretty much a therapist. No, you know, we're not saying that therapists aren't. You still need to see your therapist. This is not our field of things.
You're not a therapist.
But we will listen and give you the best advice as to what we can do to help you.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, the range on what you can make in this field really depends on you. Like, word of mouth, your clientele, obviously, where you're located is huge too. Like, for instance, we have an injector that came from a big med spa. We're a little mom and pop shop here, but she came from a big med spa in Texas where, you know, people knew the name of the med spa, so they were just rolling in. Here, she's having to be more personable and sell herself as an individual. And I think it's a good change because it lets you understand who you are as a person and as an injector individually. And that's what people come to see you for. Now, I get in big cities, we go to somebody because we trust their name, but guess what? Those injectors don't mean that they're any better than anywhere else. They could have had one class and be in there poking on you. So, you know, do your research and, you know, ask your injector questions so that you know that they know what they're talking about. And that's what me and Nikki will go into next week, like how to spot those red flags on an injector and how to make sure that you're choosing the right person for you. Because I think that's key. So
I completely agree. And, you know, for all new injectors, something that from the money side, something that I've seen is, and in the beginning, I think you should really worry about your clientele more than making money.
Yeah.
I mean, the money will come. It will come. Eventually it will come, but you have to work on your clientele first.
And know that this is not an overnight success, and this is a 24-hour gig. Like, you have to promote yourself on social media. Remember, 80% of your clientele is coming from that. So, I mean, it's a lot of work at home. It's a lot of answering questions for people to get them in here. I feel like that's what makes this difficult. It's a commitment because it's an all the time thing. Like, when I started this, I never stopped, if that makes sense. Like, I've had constant 60 messages on Facebook a day, text messages, and I try to make sure I get to everybody. But it can be overwhelming, but that's what's going to make you different, is that you are personable, you get back with your clients, and you aren't just seeking out the money side of it, but you're seeking out, you know, the career side of it. And understanding now the money side for people who are looking to get into aesthetics. We'll talk about what average pay is for an aesthetic injector, and this is all over the United States. We actually looked into several different options for our injectors because I came from a clinic that I felt like I wasn't treated fairly. And I didn't want that for my injectors. Now, brand new injectors too, especially in small towns, or just anywhere. I feel like new injectors, you think the grass is greener on the other side, but if you've got an environment that you're happy in, if you've got clientele you're built up, always have those open conversations with the owners, because trust me, sometimes they don't even know what's happening.
But most of the time, they don't know what's happening.
But for us, and for most people that we know that own med spas, they go by the national average and what's going to benefit not just the injector, but the client and the clinic, because everybody here has to be able to survive.
Yeah, and not only they have to be productive with what they bring to the table. They have to bring money forward, because more than likely, like you said, we are a mom and pop little place here. There's very few med spas that are franchised, that are, multiple locations to where they can afford for that person to not bring in money. You have to be able to bring in money too. And, something that you can even think about doing on the beginning, if your clinic owner's cool with it, try some incentives, some discounts on the front end. Help them get to know you, so they're not worried so much about what they're going to spend. And you're not worried about that much either. You're getting a client. That's future money.
And most of the time, if you're in a smaller town, you are going to make commission based. You're not going to be hourly typically. Unless there's something else you're doing in the clinic that makes sense for hourly, you're going to expect to look for something that's commission. And typically it's a commission bracket. The more you make, or the more you make the clinic, the more
you sell, the more you make. Yeah. I mean, that's, at least that would be
or it's a flat rate of like 20%, but here's the difference. Some people do 20% off of the profit. Some people do 20% off of the full sale. So understanding kind of the dynamics, most of the time it evens itself out to a good 20%.
It does, 15 to 20
on average, from everything we've looked at, and from even talking to our reps too, everything they've seen, like that is what you're looking at as an injector. Now that can mean that you can bring in anywhere from $70,000 to $200,000 a year as an injector, depending on your clientele, how much you're in the clinic. Like, you can't expect to be in the clinic 3 days a week from 11 to 4 and make $200,000 a year. It's not going to happen.
Sounds great, but it's not going to happen.
No, it's a lot of work. So I feel like when people jump into this, they need to understand, like, you're making a commitment to this career and it's ever changing. You have to pay for education. You have to continue that education. You have to change and adapt to the things that adapt in this industry, and that you may be comfortable doing something one way, but learning another is not a bad thing. So it's just, you have to be a flexible individual to be successful in this industry.
And I've spoke with a couple nurses, and what I've realized, the best explanation that I've given on the front end is, you are pretty much your own business once you close that door, because there's no one else that will determine. You are performance based. Yeah. It is your performance that will base what you're going to get paid.
It is a skill. You have to be an artist. You have to have the eye for this. Like, it's not just a trade that you pick up. Like, for instance, I'm a nurse practitioner. I did sutures quite often for injuries. Like, you just get in there and you sew the person up. It's not necessarily an art. This is an art, okay? Like,
you're closing and opening.
Go in there and just pop some filler in. Like, you have to understand so many different dynamics.
And I can speak on that because I'm a nurse. I've helped with the class. I've been a part of your class 50 times. I've heard the information. I've seen, how many people do you think I've seen you inject? Could I do it now though? No, I'm not the artsy type person. I'm a very logical person, and I struggle to see a lot of what you see sometimes, because you do have that art. That art side of you, that you can see the difference in things. It's not for me necessarily, but I think it does take a certain person. They have to have that mindset. They have to be able to see, and you can almost tell right out the gate with a nurse if they're going to be able to do it or not.
I feel like as soon as I do one of my classes, I can tell who belongs and who struggles. And that doesn't mean that you can't adapt. It just, I know who has it and who is going to be a great injector. It's an eye. It's an art.
Yeah, it's like any talent. Some people pick it up right out the gate, and some people have to work a little harder for it.
And so if it takes going to a class and seeing if that's something you're interested in, then that's great. But you can't be somebody that learns it one way and does it the same way over and over again. Like, it's not going to work.
I think the adaptate, you said the person has to be very adaptable. They have to, man, that's a very good explanation.
And you have to be able to, every person that sits in your chair is different. And you can't treat one size fits all. It just doesn't work. I mean, try to order a shirt from out of the country, okay? One size does not fit all, okay?
No, it does
it's
not.
just, so you can't assume your patients are the same way. So you have to have that artistic eye. You have to know your education, your anatomy and physiology. You have to understand how you balance these fillers, areas of the face that are movable, all of that. And this is all stuff that we'll talk about later. But statistically, in this industry, with the growth, there's going to be, I mean, med spas are just 20 to 25% more growth than that. We're looking at, an average revenue for a business too is about $1 million to $2 million. That does not mean you take that home. Okay, so if you're thinking about opening a business, it's not all it's cracked up to be. You've got staff to pay, there's medical regulations you have to follow, and we'll go into some of that stuff too. I feel like that was really difficult when we opened the clinic, was to understand what the legalities are, because we're kind of in this gray area. So how many boards are we regulated by?
I think 4 at this point.
So with that being said, like, me and Nikki will talk next week too. We were talking about how in Texas, like, anybody can pick up a syringe and inject. And technically here, if you have a medical director, anybody can. But go back to the oath that you make as a nurse and as a nurse practitioner or a doctor. Can you or can't you do something? That is your answer. This is medical. Every bit of it's medical. These are medications. They have severe side effects. You can harm somebody injecting any of these things. And it's not okay. People are dying from getting stuff from out of the country, Botoxes and stuff. So when you think of aesthetics, you need to think medical too. So that when you're looking clients, like if you're looking for a med spa, you want somebody that has a nurse practitioner or doctor in the building that does a good faith exam. A lot of people don't know what that is, and that's really scary. Like if you go in and you see just a nurse and you want an exam done prior to make sure that you're a good candidate for a product, because these are medications, ask to see the nurse practitioner or the doctor. If they don't have either in the building, then that tells you right there it's probably not a safe place to be. So I feel like, growing from here, people need to go back to their roots when it comes to medical. If it is not following in suit with those regulations, then you're not probably doing it correctly. So people who own med spas who may not be able to, like, we couldn't find the answers to a lot of things. If you go back to the medical side of it, you'll usually find your answer.
This is true.
And that's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep your patients safe. And that's all we want, really. We want happy, safe
medical morality. You have to have that medical morality. Even though we are not necessarily under a strict regulation, for example, the aesthetic board for medical services, I know we don't have our own board, but we
will.
It's very soon, I'm sure. With
this growth rate at 47 billion, somebody's going to make money off of that regulation.
We already know where there's money, there will be regulation. Mm-hmm. So in saying that, you and I, we have practiced in our clinic like we were regulated by the medical board since day one.
You wouldn't go to a vet to get your blood pressure medicine and ask them about your problems, would you? Then why would you go to somebody without the education or the underlying degree to treat you with a medication that potentially has side effects that can kill you? Just think basic medical knowledge, safety for yourself. And I know this Groupon stuff is crazy, but if somebody's trying to sell you $9 Botox, then that's probably a big red flag too, unless they're just doing it for free. It's not happening in 2024, guys.
Someone would have to be giving them that Botox.
Yeah, literally.
Literally. You have to know, we understand that people come to us here because you don't know things, but there are ways that you can at least find out enough to keep you safe. And that's the goal. You never want to go somewhere where you could potentially get fake Botox injected. Yeah. So you just want to make sure you know enough to keep yourself safe. And
it's okay to ask to see the vial. I had somebody ask about, seeing a vial of tirzepatide, which is fair because there's so much going around. She heard of somebody doing it for $150 for the month. And I'm like, there's no way. You can't even purchase the medication for that. So I showed her the medication, and it's okay to ask your med spa or.
Now, if they say no, then we know something's going on, right then.
You have the right to ask. You have the right to see. Same thing goes for your Botox. You can literally look up what the real brand of Botox is and be able to tell that's what you're getting. So it's okay to ask those questions, and you shouldn't get offended as the spa owner. There's just too much going on in this world, And it's okay to be overly protective in this industry
You
with yourself.
almost have to be at this point.
Well, I've just even locally have heard of injector or people injecting either themselves with zero medical background, or they're being overseen by somebody and they're not a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
They're an esthetician, and I do not believe that's okay as a provider myself. Like, that is not okay. This is a medication. There are severe consequences to injecting some of these things, and a medical professional should be doing it. So that's just how I feel about it. And if you go back to the medical board, they'll say the same thing. Call the nursing board. If it's a medication, they're going to tell you a nurse has to be the one injecting it. But with that being said, statistically, this industry is showing a mega boom.
I mean, quick, too.
5 to 10 years. Regulations are going to change. We'll each week talk about the most common procedures in this industry. We'll educate you on them. We'll talk statistics about those too. But at any point you have questions or concerns, med spa owners, injectors, there's no bad questions. And maybe we're learning something from you when you message us. So you can do that. So on our podcast, on our Instagram, on our website, our Facebook. I mean, we're here to support. Again, we're not claiming to know it all. We are literally 3 years old, and we are learning so much as we go. And we're going to share that with you. We're going to share the terrible stuff we went through to get to where we're at. But right now,
and if there's any topics that you guys are interested in that you would like for us to hit on, I mean, that's kind of like what we're here for as well, because there's so much to this industry that is uncovered, that is not talked about, how the procedures are done, how they affect your body, how they work, whatever it is,
where they were created, why they were created.
Yes.
Sometimes understanding that background makes you feel better about why we're using it. So next week, Nikki and I are going to talk about what is Botox, how was it created, what does it actually do chemically, what types there are, why do we use it, what are the red flags, all of the things. And then following that, all these booming things like our microneedling, our PO threads, everything. All this stuff that is showing huge growth because they're non-surgical procedures that truly show amazing results. We're going to hone in on that stuff. But we're open to suggestions and questions. So just stay tuned. And thank you for watching.
Till next time, beauties.
And we're going to get better with this. Okay? We're working on it.